Dreary night. Hopefully we'll be out before any bad storms come up. This time, Ms. Kinzer, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Parker? Here. Ms. Kinzer's here. Ms. Hopkins? Mr. Fulbright?
Here.
Mr. Moore?
Present.
Ms. Urban? Here. Mr. Sims?
Here.
Mr. Hooper?
Here.
Mr. Howell?
Here.
Mr. Lindsay? Here. Mr. Dudley? Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. This time we will rise and have the pledge led by Mount Pleasant Elementary School and a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. You can have your seat. Tommy, would you be willing to go back and get the sign-up sheet for me, please? No, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah. Sorry, that sounded bad. At this time, I'll take a motion for the adoption of the agenda. I have a motion to approve. We have a second for Mr. Hooper. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Mr. Moore, is there any discussion on the approval of the agenda? No. Okay. Okay. All right. All right, all those, we'll go ahead and, no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor of approving agenda, you'll vote yes. Those not in favor will vote no. That motion passes unanimously. We have an approved agenda. Let's move next to recognitions and announcements. Can we get that put back up there? Thank you. Mr. Hickman.
Good evening, Board. Tonight we'd like to take some time out and really shine the spotlight on some of Murray County students and some of the accomplishments that they've made this year. Due to COVID restrictions and the trying to keep it spaced, what we've decided to do is do half of the district tonight and then the other half the next meeting. So we have invited the students, half of them tonight and the other half the next meeting. So first off, I'd like to recognize the Columbia Central High School valedictorian, which is Shelley Lynn, and our salutatorian, which is Ryan Tomlin. Are either of For Culleoka Unit School, our valedictorian is Kaylee Manor, and our salutatorian is Isabella Batdorf. For our Hampshire Unit School, our valedictorian is Carly Rowland, and our salutatorian is Hannah Hartsfield. And the students that are in attendance, if you would like to come up to be recognized when we call your name. Mount Pleasant High School, our valedictorian is Kristen Chapman, and our salutatorian is Pooja Patel. Santa Fe Unit School valedictorian is Emily Hopkins, and our salutatorian is Jordan Litton. And both of these students are in attendance. Spring Hill High School is our valedictorian is Deep Patel, and our salutatorian is Rachel England. Mr. Cobb, if you're in here, if you want to go ahead and make sure to take the pictures of our salutatorians and valedictorians.
Yeah.
Okay.
Never mind, don't worry about it.
Our Girls State delegates are Sydney Castillo of Columbia Central, Holly McAdams of Columbia Central, Patton Powers of Columbia Central, Morgan Kennedy of Santa Fe Unit School, Emmy Bates of Santa Fe Unit School, Margaret Hurt of Mount Pleasant, Kylie Brewer from Mount Pleasant, Hannah Damastis from Culleoka, Tyler Reichman from Culleoka, Kylie Thomas from Culleoka, and Avery Keeler from Hampshire. Boys State delegates was Samuel Gutner from Hampshire Unit School. Governor School are representatives that were selected to attend Governor School for engineering, Avery Bryant, Autumn Bopp, and Mia Nguyen. For arts, Walker Andrews. Music, is that Boyer Kitson? I apologize. And Eleanor Weaverling. For computational physics, Sullivan Wyndham. Once again, we invited part of the students tonight. We'll invite the next other half next meeting so they can be recognized in front of the board as well. Really a big kudos to those students and especially all the hard work and tremendous support from their parents to help them to obtain these measures.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to everyone on their accomplishment. We have 6 folks who have signed up for our public delegations, well, 7 folks actually. I do want to check the ones that signed up tonight as you walked in the door. These do need to be items that are on the agenda. So I'm seeing some of these that look like they're not, but I want to make sure that I'm not missing them on the agenda. Ms. Fullerton, what are you speaking about? Reading intervention materials. And I didn't see that on the agenda. Did anybody else see that? Where is it? Reading intervention materials, there it is, under consent agenda 31. Online text, Ms. Harrison? Yes, online textbook materials and textbooks. Okay, I see that there. Budget 2021, Ms. Crooks? Yes. Okay, that's not on the agenda for tonight. Ms. Newland? Yes. What? Contract renewals number 35, okay. Mr. Morrow, you will be coming up for McDowell Elementary. Thank you for being here tonight. Mr. Dallas. Yes, your item? Adoption of the agenda itself. Item number 3. Okay, all right. All right, then I'll have each of you come up at the time when we get ready to discuss that, and I'll be able to introduce you here in just one second. And then, Mr. Anderson, we've received your request in plenty of time, and you'll have your time to speak on an item not on the agenda. I'll call you up in a little bit. Mr. Dallas, I'll let you go ahead and come up for 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is James Dallas. I live at 1608 Mary Court in Columbia. And I know this is a bit puzzling, but it's my understanding that any item on the agenda can be commented on. And so I wanted to speak on number 3. I was somewhat disappointed that the agenda was adopted without any discussion tonight because there's an obvious item that is missing, namely the comment by the Murray County Education Association. This is an item that has been traditionally on the agenda, and it's my understanding that it was left off after some discussion at a meeting back last month. It's my understanding that the conversation was centered on a concern that the MCEA comment period was taking too long. I went back and reviewed each meeting where it occurred, and the longest meeting, longest time period during any meeting seemed to be about 7.5 minutes. All in all, I saw that there were about 18 minutes of MCEA comment across 4 meetings. If I missed any, I apologize. It seemed to me, however, that an organization that represents about 400 teachers ought to be able to be given about the time it takes to heat up a baked potato in the microwave at the meeting. So I would encourage y'all to add it back to the agenda at the next meeting. Thank you very much.
At this time, our next public delegation will be Mr. Anderson. If you could come forward, state your name, your district, and you will have 5 minutes, since this is a request that was made in writing 7 days prior to the meeting. I am going to time you.
No doubt, no doubt. Chandler Anderson, 127 Creekside Drive, District 4. Mr. Fulbright's my representative, unless I get in trouble, and it's David Moore. Well, what a difference a week and a couple of phone calls makes. It'll certainly change your opinion on folks. A friend of mine recently stated policy is power. When we look at the Murray County Public School System Policy 6.304 relative to bullying, it is very clear the negative effects that has on children. Over the last several months, I've sat back and I've witnessed teachers condone bullying. One even said to me that bullying was part of life and we should just accept it. I've seen emails from administrators that focus on the personalities of parents rather than the kids that have been bullied. I've watched a group of teachers heckle a parent who was advocating for her bullied child. I've watched that same parent be called Regina George online, a reference to the Mean Girls character from the movie. I've watched a school board member roll her eyes when a parent talked about her experiences. I've even been arrested personally for standing up for my children who were bullied, which one of the central teachers so eloquently pointed out in a group text this weekend. Interestingly, none of those very vocal people who criticized that parent bothered to ask how the child who was bullied was doing. None of them asked how this whole ordeal has affected her mentally and emotionally. In case any of y'all are wondering, she's one of the kids that made the girls' state. That speaks to her perseverance. We have certainly had some dark days as a school system over the last couple of years. However, Friday, a clear message was sent. A change is not only going to come, as the late Sam Cooke said, but it is here. It is here in the form of a new director of schools that follows policy. We have a director of schools that focuses on the one group of people that truly matter most, children. I want to caution all those teachers, administrators, and citizens who believe bullying is just a part of life and our children should just deal with it, that there's a leader who will not tolerate it. On behalf of bullied children, thank you, Michael Hittman. Thank you for standing up to the antiquated system that allowed pervasive bullying, a system that favored friends over facts, a system that attacked a parent for advocating for her child. And thank you, Dr. Rose McClain, for accepting the interim position at a moment's notice. This is a historical time in Murray County. The time is now to make Murray County great again, Murray County schools great again. It is time to ensure every child out there, like a little girl who was the first integrated child at McDowell School in 1964 named Rose Ogilvie, that they can be anything they want in the greatest country on earth, including the first African American principal of Central High School. And that's going to happen. And it's going to happen because the Murray County school system and this school board is dedicated to making sure every child in this system gets the best education in this nation. So thank y'all, and we appreciate the very tough decision you all had to make. There were people, nobody's going to agree with every decision, but we appreciate it, and congratulations to Dr. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. At this time, we will move to our consent agenda items, and I will at this time ask the public delegations that have business under the consent agenda items to come forward. Ms. Fullerton.
How is everybody tonight? I'm Beth Fullerton. My address is 1300 Mariner Drive, over in Sunnyside. And, hang on. I'm here to speak about the nearly $200,000 being spent on reading intervention materials. I cannot say whether I'm for or against this expenditure. I'm sorry, because the invoice was not attached on the agenda. I do feel, however, that the best intervention material is a teacher that can interact with the students, that can be there when they need someone to hear them, to work with them when they can't sound out a word, or to understand them when no one else is there to even try. We have a lot of students at home that, for various reasons, don't have anybody to work with them on those things in the evening, and then we have those students who do have that, and there's a huge difference between the two in their ability to read. I am disappointed that the depth of what our Murray County teachers do in classrooms every day is overlooked. I'm disappointed that more ESSER money is not being used to attract the best and brightest early career teachers to our district, and to pay the dedicated teachers that have remained here their full careers to teach, support, and continue dedication to the future of Murray County. As a secondary 10th grade English teacher, I have to say that students who do not get the reading fundamentals, by the time they get into 10th grade, it's very, very hard for us to work with them on the advanced standards that we need them to work on, because if they can't read at a basic level or on grade level, or even maybe 2 grades below, then it's really, really hard for us to get them to be on grade level on our standards. I'm disappointed that we've had no salary increase since 2017. Steps are not raises. MCA speaks for me. Thank you.
The next item on the public comment period, Ms. Harrison.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I could ask that we could please stick to policy on this.
Thank you.
People are making comments that are not related. If
We
they
do
would like
need to keep it
if they would
on
like to
target.
speak on non-related issues, I would be more than happy to take a vote for us to approve that. But if we could just stick to things that are actually on the
Yes,
agenda.
please do. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. Thank you.
I'm Deneen Harrison. I live at 1151 Clare Drive in Spring Hill, Tennessee. And I just want to thank you for purchasing the textbooks for our students. We have really long needed this for many years. And I'm glad that you've chosen to use some of our ESSR, ER money to purchase these much needed items. Being an English language learning teacher, as well as a regular classroom teacher for almost 30 years, I know, as well as other professional educators, that our students learn in many different ways. And having these online textbooks as well as the physical textbooks to be able to reference are so very important. And having that different media to be able to consult is just so valuable to them in their courses of study. And we are preparing the future of our county, and as educators, we do not always have that material that will reach every student, and it was just a great contribution to see that we are placing emphasis on these materials that will be used and that we respect, and we will learn from these texts. And I
Thank you.
appreciate you
Thank you
letting
very
me
much.
speak. And MCA speaks for me.
All right. Thank you very much. Ms. Newland, you'll be the next one and the final of our public delegation during this time.
Good evening, Board. Good evening, everyone. I'm a District 6 resident and, as you know, a teacher at Spring Hill Middle School. I'm going to kind of toot our own horn over at Spring Hill Middle. I'm in charge of the green team there, and we do the recycling. We try to use the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, recycle. And as a grade level in 6th grade, we've had a STEAM project going on this entire year. Maybe some of you have seen the pictures on Twitter. But we have gotten several $1,000s in grants and constructed a pollinator garden that we're just about finished with. It's in action in the back property of Spring Hill Middle School. When I looked through the agenda and I saw the contracts with Murray County Waste, and I've brought this up before with the Murray County Commissioners, it just distresses us in our building to see that everything has switched to styrofoam and plastic in the cafeteria. We've actually done some math analysis. I don't know if you've seen the black garbage bags that are the big lawn garbage bags, but we're talking about bags about 3 times that size, and we figure on average just our school goes through 20 of those bags a day, which is about 100 bags a week. Times the 22 schools, I'd say it's easily thousands of bags of garbage that's mostly styrofoam, plastic, and then some food waste. And I've asked for years why we can't use the plastic trays that go through the washing system that we used to use at every single school. And of course the answer is, we know what the answer is, it's cheaper to buy styrofoam and throw it away. So the green team has noticed that. They've been analyzing how much waste we're creating in a day, let alone in the school system. And I'm just pleading that we consider how much, I realize it's $300 per ton, and the county commission is telling us that the landfills are full, and there's an issue of getting any more garbage to that landfill. I think it's Marshall County, and it seems cheap, but I am passionate about 2 things: children and the planet, and of course the teachers that deal with the children. But it goes together. If we're going to have a future in this community and a future in our country, a future on planet Earth, we have got to think forward. And thousands of bags of styrofoam and plastic a week going to Marshall County because it's cheap is not the answer. So I'm asking that we reconsider paying for the person who would be in the kitchen washing those reusable trays versus creating hundreds of bags of garbage per day per school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right. Moving to our consent. Mr. Morrow, I have not forgot you. You'll come up when we get to McDowell. Is that all right with you? All right. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lindsay. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Consent agenda passes unanimously. Moving on to finance, Mr. Laconin.
There's nothing.
For real?
Summer school programs next, as far as I can see. We presented financials at the last board meeting. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I do want to ask you, since this is your time to shine, what does the schedule look like from the county commission as far as when our budget, we need to look at towards our budget part of that?
So May 10th is the budget committee meeting where the schools will come, and then we're also doing capital on May 11th. So those 2 nights are key.
Okay.
So that'll be next Monday and Tuesday.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Lindsay.
Mr. Laconin, I think it's worth noting that just a few minutes ago we got BEP estimates, so knowing moving forward that we probably won't be able to include those in our budget proposal that comes next week, so we will have some type of amendment to our budget, and I'm assuming that everybody's okay with that moving forward from the county commission side.
I think I have received the information that our BEP revenue is going to go up by approximately $1.6 million, so that's all good news. And so that is, it'll be up to this school board to determine what you would like to do with those funds for next year. It will be included in your revenue budget, and I think it'll be smart for the budget committee to send it back to you all to make those decisions, and I'll communicate that to the budget committee, and they'll make their decisions.
Anything else? Thank you. All right, instruction. Mr. Hickman, will you start us off?
Yes, for you guys, we have our consideration for summer school, even though this summer school has been mandated by the state. Per our policy, we still have to have the vote of the board to accept it.
Second for Mr. Howell. Any discussion on the summer school program? Seeing none, looks like we're at Ms. Parker.
I know that it just generally references the legislation that was approved, but in our policy, it looks like there's certain things that we're supposed to be setting forth, what attendance requirements are, all of those things. Did I miss that?
If I can speak on that, we have been promised for the last 2 Fridays, I know, or 3 Fridays, how the state is going, what their expectation is on that, and we still are waiting on that expectation. All we know now is because of the TANF money that they're using, that we have to, our percentage of people that enroll that qualify for that money, that's how it's going to be funded. However, they're telling us we're going to have to take attendance, but there really hasn't been a lot of guidelines what that mandate's going to be, how often that's going to be. All we know is an app is coming, and that's pretty much what they've said. However, if the board wants to supersede that and say, hey, we want to have a criteria for attendance ourselves, we can do that. But as I'm sitting here, every commissioner call we get to hear, oh, you'll have this by this Friday, and when Friday rolls around, nothing happens.
I'll just say, for me, I think it's premature at this point to adopt what's presented because it doesn't really comply with the policy that we set forward as a board. I mean, I recognize that you're still waiting on details from the state, but I think it's kind of a rush for us to adopt something that doesn't include the things that we said needed to be in a summer school program. I mean, if somebody would like to add that, or, I'd be happy to make that an amendment to the motion, but I just feel like right now I couldn't approve the summer school as it's presented right now because I think there's still too many unknowns out there for our students and for our teachers.
Mr. Moore.
Thank you. It's similar to the concerns I have. Mr. Hickman, I know I've asked you all along because this was one of my concerns that we would get to this point late in the process and be, as we always are, waiting on the state. I mean, my concern all along was, are we setting ourselves up for success here by fully creating a program that has our own requirements, that we've decided are what's best for our kids, and that we are going to have a successful program that actually helps them get caught up on some of the things we've missed over a year now. I mean, if you feel like we're at that point, or do you feel like, as Ms. Parker is saying, that perhaps we should set this back and then bring some additional information to go with this?
I'm going to get Renee to come up and speak a little bit. Her and Dr. Miller have kind of been heading that up, and the two that's been waiting on the state, trying to get the information.
So the attendance and priority for attendance is established by the legislation, and it is basically low income or achievement. We can look at achievement levels of students. In some grade levels, we can look at their low income, whether they're from a low income family. On others, as a district, we're looking towards the one priority that we can use, which is if our schools have more than 50% of their students not at grade level on the state assessment, or not at proficiency on the state assessment, all of our schools would meet that criteria. So we believe that we can add all of those, we can accept all students, but we're just not sure because the state hasn't given us more guidance on that. We know what the parameters are, and we know that we think we can accept most of our students, if not all of them. On the attendance app is not available, but we do know that they will be tracking. We will only get reimbursed for the money that we have from TANF if we meet a 25% eligibility for low income. So we have to track, and we have to do, they're going to give us some type of a timeline that says you have to submit numbers on this date, this date, this date, and then they will calculate to see how many of those students are low income, and we will be reimbursed based on that. So we need to make sure that we have enough students enrolled to get that back into our revenue account. And until we know how they're going to gauge that, we can't say whether we can just accept every student or if we need to really focus in on those TANF students or low-income students.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I guess I'm struggling with that. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I'm hearing a revenue piece of this. But if the goal is to actually meet the needs of students, and if students are coming out here to sign up, why on earth, I mean, we've got additional money coming from the next ESSER funds. Why on earth would we be turning any kids down for this? I don't understand that.
We haven't turned any children down yet. Registration closed Monday, and we're going through those numbers, and we have not turned any students down. We are now determining locations, and we're trying to figure out how many teachers we need. We have all of our teacher data. So we are very close to being able to decide where we're going to have students. We have all of the meal locations identified. We have transportation estimates. We just need to financially, we have to submit a budget to the state for that summer funding. We have to tell them how many of our students are TANF. We have to tell them how many students that we have in certain grade levels and locations. And so the funding is inextricably combined with how we plan the program. We want to include all of our students that need help. We don't want to turn anyone away, and we don't have plans to. We just aren't sure about how we're going to have to track and ensure that we meet those criteria in the law.
Okay. I mean, I guess I would echo Chris. I mean, she may ask again her question about meeting our own policy on this.
Ms. Parker?
I guess the question I would ask is, are we communicating to students and parents, hey, your child is not proficient, we need them to come to summer school, or are we just opening up a survey and saying, come if you want?
We opened up the survey, but we also reached out to principals and gave them access to the site live so they could see the students that were signing up. As they were signing up, we encouraged them to reach out to those students that aren't on here that you know need to be in summer school. So they have been contacting parents, getting them to log in and sign up their students. So we've been working with our principals and their teams to get the students that we need signed up to sign up.
Okay. But I go back to, from an attendance requirement, I mean, my understanding is we're talking about 4 weeks, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So if somebody could only come to 2 of those weeks, is that are they going to make us out of compliance if they don't show up for 2 weeks? Because at this point, we don't really have attendance requirements set out in this.
Correct. So we've allowed parents to sign up for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. We will accept them any time. 1 day is better than no days.
Okay.
So we are accepting them. Will it mess up some of our funding? It could, but we're not basing it on that. We're just trying to make sure that we've encouraged everybody to sign up for at least 2 weeks, hoping that would at least meet the metric, whatever it may be, that if they're there for a good 2 weeks, they'll at least be counted maybe twice and will help us get to that funding goal that we need, but we're accepting students no matter what.
Okay.
If we can make this all work together. We do not want to turn students away. We're just trying to make it all work together.
And I know that you guys have been promised stuff by the state. I mean, do you have a timeline on when you could provide point by point to satisfy the policy that we've adopted? I mean, we talked about following policy. So hate for us to break our own policy if we can try to avoid that.
Mhm.
That's really my biggest beef at this point.
And our funding application is due May 7th, and that's where we have to break down all of the enrollment. So we have to have numbers by then, so I would assume that we would know by then. May 7th is our deadline. We've got to have numbers.
So the state has to communicate to you all
We
before
have
May
to
7th.
communicate to them what our enrollment is to meet our 25%. I can't say that that's when they will tell us the application, what that looks like, and what the standards are for that. We just have to tell them, here's our enrollment. And we don't want to provide something that isn't correct, and they say, well, you're not meeting your criteria. Because we're not sure how it's going to work.
Let me add too, with the applications, they put us on a tiered level of when we could apply. There are some schools that let out early May. For those folks, they put them on the first tier, and we were placed on the second tier to apply. So you may hear other districts may say, hey, we've already applied. They may have been one of the ones that got to be the first tier, and we were given specific dates when we could start applying, and that is it.
And we are preparing all the curriculum. We're ready to order materials. We are moving full steam ahead with preparation for all the kids that need to come and want to come to participate. We can't be sure of what the attendance criteria will be.
Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I believe we're ready to vote on the proposal for summer school as presented. Okay, with a vote of 7-2, the program passed, is approved. Updated course catalog. Mr. Hickman. Go
Can I
ahead.
say one thing?
Yes.
Even though it did pass, I would really like at our next meeting to have those answers to our policy provided.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Who's doing the updated catalog?
Tonight, just for your presentation, this is not something that, it's more of a procedure, therefore it does not need the board vote. However, we do want to present it to you if you have any questions, concerns, or comments on the course catalog. Murray County Public Schools formerly did have a course catalog, and I guess over the years they just either did away with it or it got stored somewhere. So one of the things that I've had our instruction department working on this year is a middle school course catalog as well as a high school course catalog. I have both Mr. Deschamps and Miss Dr. Pennell here. Kudos to them, and they're also here to answer any questions or for any concerns. Please excuse their dress. They have been packing TCAP boxes all day in the warehouse and came pretty much straight from there to here.
Is there anything that y'all would like to ask or share as part of a presentation or just for our perusal? Okay, does the board have any questions or comments from our end? We appreciate the sharing of this information with us. Looks like y'all put a lot of hard work into all these things, so thank you for that. And thank you for packing boxes. I'm sure that was a lot of fun on a humid, muggy day. All right, zoning and facilities, Mr. Perriman.
Good evening. The first thing we have tonight is the intrusion and fire alarm monitoring contract. This was bid out through the county purchasing department. It did come back with the bid being, upon your approval, being awarded to Prevention Security here in Columbia. This is a one-year bid that has the option for 4 more years of renewal. We did discuss this at the work session. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a motion to approve from Mr. Moore, second from Mr. Hooper. Any discussion on the fire, or the intrusion and fire alarm monitoring? Mr. Hooper. Seeing no discussion, I believe we're ready to vote. Okay, we have vote, 1, 2, 3, 4. Passes unanimously with 1 abstention. All right, now, we're gonna talk about McDowell. Whenever we have a member for public delegation, we don't usually have a rebuttal time, so I'm gonna make a few comments on this myself right now before I ask Mr. Moore to come up Mr. Morrow to come up and share his, thoughts with us. I was scheduled to have a meeting with Mayor Mulder, Ogles, and Commissioner Morrow last Monday. I believe I referenced that at our work session. I had to cancel that because of a work conflict at the last minute, so I did not get to meet with them and hear their ideas and suggestions. I do have the meeting rescheduled for next week, middle of next week. Before we do anything else, and before I ask Mr. Morrow to come up, I'm going to throw this out there that I would like to postpone the vote on property surplusing McDowell till next month, just so I can have an opportunity, and the board can have an opportunity to hear what other entities within the county have to say about the use of that building and that property. With that being said, I believe we did have some clarification this week on how that process goes when it's a school board dealing with other governmental agencies, where it would not have to go through a bid or a sale. Is that what I understood the email to say, Mr. Wolver? But if we do surplus it, we do have to go through that process, correct?
You don't know exactly. You can donate it to the county. I mean, you donate it to another governmental entity, whether you surplus it. I still think you have to surplus the property, but you can donate it. But beyond that,
Okay. All right, so I guess I understood that a little differently then. So what ramifications does designating it as surplus have if we do that tonight?
none. I mean, you're looking to dispose of it at some point. The second part of the process is figuring out how you're gonna dispose of it.
Okay. All right, I'm going to stand by my suggestion. I'd like to push this off for a month, just to get more information. I want to bring this up, and I want to bring it up tactfully. I think that the school board and the county commission have a real good opportunity now to try to work together on some projects, not only this, but some other projects going forward. And I think some of the things that I've read and seen in some of the meetings have made me question that, from some of the quotes and some of the items that have come from those meetings. However, I do have faith that our county commission wants to do what's right for Murray County. Our county commission wants to do what's right for the children of Murray County and the schools. And I hope that we can find some good common ground and working relationship going forward. We have not always had that, and I think that has been brought back up by some members of the county commission and probably didn't need to be brought up. So I think we have a good path ahead of us if we can stay focused. So with that said, I will introduce our headliner for this evening. Don Morrow, if you could state your name, your district, and you have the floor. We'll turn your mic on, or you won't be.
There you go. You got me? Yeah, I didn't know I was going to be the headliner. I'd like to say greetings, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Director, members of the school board, especially District 1. Ms. Parker, thank you for keeping that seat. You've done a good job. I'd like to preface my comments by saying I'm not here representing the county commission as their chairman. They did not send me here tonight. I'm here for District 1 only. So I would like to make sure that is on the record, because I am District 1 to commissioner. Most of the downtown area is my district. I have two commissioners with me, Commissioner Stovall and Commissioner Barner, who share the rest of the downtown area, and I'll explain that shortly. And secondly, I appreciate what you do. I'm not here to dabble in your business in any way. You're elected by the citizens of this county to represent them, and I have every bit of confidence that you're here to do that. So let the record show I'm not here to suggest or dabble in your business. I'm here with passion for District 1 and McDowell School, okay? In the 15 years of politics, I have never addressed the school board. So that should tell you I'm here for one passionate reason, or otherwise I would have been here before, but you have a job to do. So tonight I would like to talk about McDowell School, and all I'm asking tonight is, as you know, Murray County and our growth that we've seen, and we're all in this together. That's why you're asking for new schools. We're in this together with the growth. We are busting at the seams downtown for land. We need a place to shift some offices. If you look around the square, there's nowhere. There's nowhere to go. So I'm here from that district to say we need to look at possibly 7 acres, 4 blocks down the road to shift some offices to. And the school board has that land. And it's something that if we could have a little time to talk about it as we go through budget, we may be able to find a way to utilize that property for the citizens of Murray County, free up some space on the square. Currently, if you don't know the numbers, the clerk's office in 2018 numbers had 170,000 people come through his office. That's why you can't park downtown. You add that to the court system, we have a serious issue. So we've got to make some space somewhere. So that's one reason I'm here, because it is in my district. Secondly, the integrity of that site. If it's just sold in a bidding war or sealed bid, or if you declare it surplus and someone buys that, if some developer puts 500 apartments there or whatever, if the city would even zone that, you're putting a lot of traffic on those side streets. That's also a concern, being in my district as well. It is a historic site. Whatever happens there, if the county owned it or whatever happens, we would like to see the integrity of that site. Whatever goes there, whether it be a civic center or an office building, could be the McDowell building, something to keep that name for that particular area of town. Also, the bell out front, hopefully y'all will preserve that bell. I think you will do that, the McDowell bell. I think you'll make sure that's been a comment from several about the bell. But all I'm asking is just slow the presses. I don't know what the mayors are thinking, but I would like to put maybe a deadline of time for you to think so you can continue to operate of October 1st. I think their letter was very vague. I had no part of that particular letter. But I think if we put a deadline of slow the presses to maybe October 1st, it gives us time to work as a commission, and it gives you time to see what you're going to do on your surplus or whatever you're going to do. At the end of the day, it just gives us time, and you could, here it comes, you could just give us that land. So, there, I said it, it's out there. It's an elephant in the room. But at the same time, you understand where I'm coming from. We're all in this together with growth. It's becoming a 4-letter word, basically, for some of us. The infrastructure, the things we're facing in our budget, you as well with schools. We can either get our boats ready to float, or we can get our feet wet. And I think right now, not excluding the rain tonight and the last few days, I think we're starting to feel the moisture on our feet because we're not preparing for growth like we should. I've made a comment one time to the commission. The only way we're going to stop the growth is build a wall and let Williamson County pay for it. I got the same response that night. But all joking aside, it's serious. That's a serious problem we have coming down 65. I think we'll hit 100,000 people this year in our census. So that being said, I'm just asking if you'll slow the process. I don't know what the city has in mind. They may want to look at purchasing. I'm not speaking for the city. I'm just saying just slow the process. Maybe I can get some traction with the county commission for my district to see if we would be interested in that land for some expansion that we may need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I will, not as a rebuttal, because that would go against my policy, but I would say the county commission could also give us a high school in Spring Hill. Just as a side note there, talking about all that growth. Thank you, Mr. Morrow, for sharing those thoughts. And I do want to thank Commissioner Barner, Commissioner Stovall for being here tonight as well. Thank you both for taking the time. Ms. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow, for coming and speaking, and I know your passion for McDowell. I will say, for me, my passion is for the students of Murray County, and I do think that potentially selling that property and investing that property in another City of Columbia school or schools, we have a lot of needs. And honestly, a quid pro quo for a new high school in Spring Hill doesn't move the needle for me. It just doesn't. Because we have needs throughout our county, and I'm just a little concerned that we got a letter from 2 mayors, and it was in the paper the next day. There was no discussion with this board. This isn't something that should be a surprise to either one of those mayors. I mean, we've been having discussions about McDowell for years. And the idea of donating the property is not something that, at this point, that I think I would be in favor of. I've actually had constituents in our district that have been concerned if we convey that to the county. That's also a historical area of our district, and they're concerned about what could potentially go up there and whether or not it would have to meet the Historical Zoning Commission's requirements as well. So I think those are some things that, if y'all talk over the next period of time, I think that also needs to be looked at. But personally, I just want to see us invest in the students. I think the students in McDowell the teachers have done an amazing job in a very substandard building for a long period of time. And I think that is something that we've neglected, and I think that's something that the county commission has neglected. So we both share in this, and hopefully we can find a positive solution for it.
Thank you. Mr. Moore?
I did have a couple of questions. Jake, if I understand correctly, no matter what we do, if it's going to leave our hands, whether we sell it, give it away, it doesn't matter, we still have to surplus it, correct? So that part of this process really shouldn't change much. I mean, if I'm looking at that correctly. Now, how we handle that or how we get rid of it is a different discussion, which would not be decided based on this. We were talking about this would be simply to surplus, correct?
You have to do it for a two-part process, surplus it, and then you dispose of it. So,
Okay.
You're gonna have to surplus it if you're gonna look at, doing.
If it leaves our hands, that's gotta happen, okay.
Exactly.
Mr. Perriman, real quick, and it's something we kind of talked about briefly. There are costs to hold this property after we stop using it, correct? I mean, we've gotta pay certain utilities, alarm systems, that kind of stuff. Do you
Yes,
have
sir.
any idea of roughly what that is a month?
I can get that for you. I've sent that to you, previously as the cost of operating the system. As you talk, I think I can probably pull that up and email it to you. We would have to maintain the climate in the building, obviously, to a certain degree. We are still, if you drive by and hear the rattling of the chiller right now, the longer we have to run it, you do know that we would have to bring in a temporary chiller. We've talked about that. Obviously, the lawn has to be mowed. There's basics that have to happen. We have planned, and we are planning on, unless directed otherwise, we're beginning to move out of the building on May 25th. We've turned paperwork into the state already that says that it's no longer a school as of May 25th. They have received that and processed it. So we do have an intrusion system that would have to be there. There would be certain items we couldn't maybe remove initially. We would need to leave the camera system in as we monitor it. So there are some costs that's there. It wouldn't be overwhelming. But one thing I will say is we did not include any of that cost in the budget that was presented to you. So that would be money that would have to be found somewhere in other lines, or you would have to make some sort of amendment or move money to us to do that operating cost.
And then with it, I guess another question for Jake, if you don't mind. I mean, obviously, the longer it sits empty, I'm concerned about liabilities from that standpoint, of having an empty facility that's just kind of sitting there, other than just, somebody breaking in or doing other kind of mischief. That's really the extent of what liabilities we would have if it's sitting there as an empty building, correct?
Sure, yeah, well, your insurance is gonna cover that.
Okay.
I mean, as long as it's, if it looked like it was gonna stretch out beyond 6 months or so, that's when we would wanna get in touch with your carrier and just let them know that it was vacant. But for a short-term vacancy, I don't think that'll be a problem.
Okay, thank you.
I will say, we did have to notify, and we are waiting for the renewal number on property. We did have to notify them in March when we went through all of our properties that at some point that property would be probably no longer in the hands of the school system, and that it would not be inhabited after May 25th. So that is part of the bid that is coming back to us. They are building in that we would carry insurance on there for the year. That would prorate back at whatever point we separate with that. But right now, we did have to notify them that would basically be, for lack of a better term, an abandoned structure.
Okay, thank you.
All right then, any other discussion? I guess the surplus matter, I mean, we can go forward with that. That's not gonna determine anything beyond just designating it, that we're eventually gonna get rid of it, correct?
And you could even undo that later if you decided to go a different direction, but that is the first step.
Okay. Mr. Lindsey?
I'm ready to make a motion to surplus it if you were ready to take it.
Yes. Okay, Ms. Kinzer seconds, Mr. Lindsey made the motion. Mr. Lindsey made the motion, Ms. Kinzer seconded. Okay, with a vote of 8-1, McDowell will be declared surplus property. Now, I guess here's where I would ask for some slowing down of the process, and that is the property sale piece of this. Mr. Lindsey, your light's on.
I don't have a problem with the slowing down of it. I think Mr. Morrow brings up a valid point, and out of respect for him, I know he said he spoke as a District 1 commissioner tonight, but also out of respect for him as chairman of the commission, I think that it would be a good move on our part to slow the process a little bit, but also not totally leave it open-ended. And Mr. Morrow, he threw a date out that to me makes a lot of sense, and the suggestion from staff that we have in front of us, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, but in case I missed it, I think what you were proposing or suggesting is start taking sealed bids on June 1, and then we would target August 1 as a close date, or a date that we would be out of that building totally. Along those same lines, I think if we just back that up 2 months, started taking bids August 1, plan on being out October 1, that gives county commission time, that gives city of Clemson, whomever, that gives them some time between now and August to decide if they would like to bring a proposal to us. But in doing that, we're not slowing down either. We're continuing to move forward. The letter we received from the two mayors, as I think Mr. Morrow said, it was pretty vague, and it was open-ended. I have no desire to hold on to that property for an unnamed amount of time. I think that we need to have some target date that we're headed towards, and I think it's a good move on our part. It's a sign of cooperation with the county commission that yes, we think it's a good idea to give them some time to look at it, but still having a target date in mind. So that would be my suggestion. I can put that in the form of a motion.
Well, before you do that, I want to point something out. Setting it as a deadline date of August 1st, I would rather set it August 17th, simply so give them another county commission meeting to vote one way or another. I don't want it to drag on either. You're looking at 3 cycles at that point of committee and full commission meetings. I would think that's a gracious plenty amount of time to get a decision worked through. And I'm sure the city has their own schedule. I don't even know when their meetings are. But I'll discuss that with Mayor Mulder and let him know. And I will call both the folks tomorrow and give them updates from tonight. But that would be what I would piggyback off of yours, to say the deadline would be to have it decided by August from the county commission end. Ms. Parker?
Mr. Perryman, do you have those costs on what we would be potentially expending per month?
I got so enthralled in listening to you that I did not email those to you. If you give me...
I found it.
You found it.
I found
well,
it.
I can find it relatively quickly here. In fact, it's the first thing that pops up. So yes, ma'am, I have it as well.
Just go ahead and say you zoned out and quit paying attention.
Oh no, I never zone out on you guys. Believe me, I hang on your words every time.
Wow.
I would say, just while I have the mic on, that the memo under that particular item is a private memo to you. Again, just like I said at the work session, it was not to hide anything. I just wanted you to be able to see that recommendation and have a chance to take it in. So it's up to you guys what we do. My biggest cost, Ms. Parker, on thinking as we move forward is if the chiller somehow fails, and then we have quite a bit of cost that may come in on us.
Well, and I think that's kind of the concern that this board had, and why there won't be kids in McDowell next year. If we go back to how we've kind of worked through this process. So I'm not necessarily saying that, you know, we've got to be out of there on August 1st, but I do think that delaying it and potentially incurring more costs that are not going to benefit students, especially when we don't have that included in our budget. Our budget's not finalized by the commission at this point. It's just, we already operated a deficit, so I don't know why we would want to increase that month by month by month. I personally would rather see us move quicker on this, because I think there has been time. I mean, for a decision to be made by August, I think we could still, I don't know, I'm a little concerned about the whole idea of having somebody that's our funding body that's jumping in and saying that they want it. I'm a little concerned about somebody who potentially will be approving zoning for potential buyers jumping in and saying that they want this property. It's just, I think it puts us in a really bad position to market this property, to be completely honest. And I think it is a valuable piece of property that could do a lot of good in our system.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lindsay?
But let's be realistic about the chiller. If we make it to May 25th, we're selling the building as is, and according to the appraisal we have, it doesn't just come out and say it, but you can infer from that they put zero value on that building. That the appraisal that we got is basically the value of the land.
And I did say that to you. The building is, and the appraisal is basically worthless.
So if we get to May 25th, we're not going to. Or if the chiller goes out, it's going to be a hot building for the summer. I mean, I can, if I can get 5 other people to vote with me, it's going to be a hot building, because I'm not going to vote to spend a dime on it, I promise. But so I just think that, you know, it's worth it's just good business on our part, I think, to at least, you know, and Mr. Marmay, they may bring it up next month, and he may leave there with his tail tucked between his legs and call us and let us know, hey, there's no chance of this happening, and let's move forward. But or you guys don't have to wait on us any longer. So but I think that I think it's a good faith move on our part to back it up, and we could do that August 17th as you mentioned, and then that'll be the day, you know, the August 18th we start taking bids or whatever it may be. So
yeah, we'll have time to plan for that. I do want to reiterate, you don't have to wait till August to make a decision. You could let us know tomorrow that the county wants to pour $15 million into it. It's worth a shot. Any other discussion? A motion hasn't necessarily been made yet. Ms. Parker?
Can you just clarify that statement, though? If the county commission wants to put $15 million into it...
I just was making a
I understand it's a
crack.
joke, but for the people that go to McDowell, that's what we've been fighting. That's what we fought for.
I understand, and that was the irony
and that's
of that.
what the commission has rejected 3 times.
I do think that that's an issue that will need to be addressed, is why now is there interest in putting money in that property? So I think that is a valid point to bring up. Thank you. Has there been a motion made yet from one way or another on this? Ms. Kinzer?
I don't know that I'm gonna make a motion, but I do think giving you the opportunity to sit down and talk to them and kicking it maybe to the work session, so we'll hear the results of those talks and then we can, act on it next month, if we need to.
Yes. I'm trying to make sure my meeting is gonna be before the work session, because I do wanna make sure I have that
Yeah.
information. And
I
it
would,
should.
I would think that's what, within the 2 weeks before the work session, and we,
Yes, okay, thank you. Mr. Lindsey, do you wanna make that motion you referenced earlier?
I will. I'll make a motion that, we begin the process of the sale of McDowell and set August 20th as the day to start accepting bids, accept bids for 1 month, and then close as soon as possible after that 1 month time period.
And do we need to put any wording in there that if something changes in the meantime? Do we need to do anything with that, Jake? Okay. All right. I just wanna make sure that we're clear on what we...
I'd say August 20th would be the first day that we start accepting bids, and that would go for 1 month, and then attempt to close as soon as possible after that 1 month time period has expired.
Okay. And if the county or city comes to us with some grand idea, we can alter it at that time. All right. I have a motion from Mr. Lindsey, second from Mr. Moore. Mr. Laconin?
Once we go ahead and start working towards the bid, as things change, we can change the bid specs, based on what the board, makes decisions on, and we can work with Eric's department as well to make sure that, everything that the school board is wanting, whether there's minimums or changes or delays or however the process changes, that is a process that'll have to run through purchasing, and they will create the bid and send it back, for the school board to view and agree upon, as what's in the bid spec. So, it's just a point of clarification.
That would need to be something that we hash out then at the July work session, because then we'd have to vote on it.
You would have to agree with the bid specs, but those can change as this school board changes, as long as it's a unanimous agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. The bid process he wants to leave it open for a month. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump your words, but I just noticed that. The bid process will run from August 20th to September 20th, so I don't know how you wanna word that, but.
Mr. Fulbright, that would be the date that we would open the bids as well.
Okay, let's make sure that that's not a Saturday or Sunday.
I believe it's a Monday.
It is. Way to go. Yeah, that sounds good. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Okay, with a vote of 8-1, that motion passes. Thank you, County Commissioners, for being here and showing your support. We appreciate that very much. All right, moving on, policies. Yes.
Hi. Okay, for the first one that's listed, the policy that's listed as updated 3.211, that was on the last board agenda, and Mr. Moore asked it to be placed back on this one. I wanted to clarify why I had placed it on the last agenda. I did some more research. This was approved by the first reading was on 11/17 of 20, and then it was voted on 12/1 of 20. I'm in the process of trying to make sure the things that were approved by the board before I was in this position have been properly updated. I saw that it had been on the online posting, which was why I had gone back and reposted it to the last one. But as it stands, I did check with TSBA, it had the 2 readings, so it has been approved by the board. So if the board doesn't want to do anything other than this, I'll just go ahead and make that this was approved by the board, and I've already sent it to TSBA. I said, hold off, I gotta make sure, clarify with the board, but if you guys are good with it, I could just go ahead and say that, yes, this is our board policy, is approved on 12/1 of 20. Okay, perfect, great. Moving forward, the next policy would be the out of zone, which we discussed at the last work session. I have attached multiple options for the board, so that they could approve the one that they see fit, or if they don't want to change their policy at all, to continue the way that it currently stands. There is the different policies. The first one that was attached was the current policy as stand. The other attachment was the Senate bill, which for reference, it does look like it should be passing, but there was an amendment. It was originally supposed to take effect this July, but there was an amendment that it would take effect next July. So when that happens, I'm sure TSBA will then give that policy as to what it would be when we actually have the state law. We've also attached one where there's a 90% capacity option. I've attached one where there's the exemption for employees and rising seniors, that they would not be included in the 5%. There is one that's just where employees' children would not be included in the 5%. The 2 PDFs were attached were what was proposed by the district back last November. So I put those back on there just so you could see them. And then I believe they have also attached the out-of-zone current request and how that would affect students if we kept it at the 5%.
Mr. Moore, thank you for all that.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
And I may want to kind of run this motion by Jake as I do it. I just make a motion to suspend lines 8 and 9 from policy 6.206 effective immediately. And I think that is the most expedient way to take care of this. Is that correct, Jake? Okay. All right, thank you. For clarification, lines 8 and 9 would be the 5% sentence. It's, I think, 1 or 2 sentences there.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Moore, seconded by Mr. Howell. Mr. Lindsey.
Just a question, are we suspending the policy or are we changing the policy?
I'm suspending those 2 lines.
Suspending them, so do we need to set a length of time that we're suspending it for, or?
If I could clarify, my second part of my request, which is not part of the motion, would be that we bring this back to the next work session and we discuss how we need to readdress this. That's kind of the intention. If you want to do a timeline, I would be open to amending based on that.
I would just say that I don't have a problem addressing this at the next work session, but if we're going to suspend it, we need to suspend it for at least the 21-22 school year. That way, we don't kick it around and then August we throw them a curveball. That's my worry.
My thinking is that we are going to be rewriting this entire policy regardless sometime over the summer once we get the directives from the state. That's kind of the whole policy is going to be changed. So, but I can appreciate where you're coming from. My intention is not just to leave it on the table and let it sit there. but I do expect that we're gonna be rewriting the entire policy.
Ms. Irvin?
Here's my concern. I like suspending lines 8 and 9 and going back to the 90%, or greater, but parents want to know yesterday. So my only concern about bringing this up at the next work session, how is that going to delay?
No, it's my intention is it's suspended. This is not gonna impact next year at all.
It's not going to
We're
impact
taking it
next
out.
year. Okay, got it.
We're gonna have to revisit the entire policy.
Okay, so then we can make our decisions on. Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, if you guys could please, if you do suspend it, kind of give us staff direction as we move forward, because we do have all of the out-of-zone sitting on the principal's desk right now, and we want to make sure, do we move forward and start approving them, or do you want us to wait?
I'm suspending the policy, so y'all can, look at the rest of the policy and move ahead.
Mr. Sims?
Yeah, that was similar to what I was gonna ask. Do we know, as far as numbers go, are any schools gonna be over capacity, or, because I know some schools or parents have already gotten denial letters. Parents are in limbo right now, so we need to make some type of decision, I feel like, pretty quickly.
We did include that as part of the attachments. Not all of these are policy. Upon the board's request, we included all of the student out-of-zone requests this year, what percentage that would be for the school, et cetera. I think it's the last two items.
So schools will still be within their capacity, even with if they accept all of their out-of-zone requests, they'll still be within their total capacities?
From the 100%, yes.
Yes.
From the 90%, it would be close with two of the schools.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
So just for clarification, since we don't typically suspend lines from policies, this is kind of new territory, but you'll want this to take effect immediately, so that'll be part of the vote. And I guess what we will do is ask the TSBA to just remove those two lines temporarily from the policy, publish it back to the website until you decide something otherwise. So the policy will go back on without those two lines, and then you'll do what you want to do at a later date.
I don't think so. Does that sound exactly? Ms. Irvin?
And just to clarify, we will then be trying to come up with the new policy at next work session, correct? Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, the next policy that we work on will be for the next school year, and that will be based off the guidance from new legislation that's being proposed. Any other discussion? Are we all clear on what we're voting on? Mr. Lindsay?
I just want to make one point that there's still a line in that policy that says that children may be bumped out of attendance at the school of enrollment at any time to give priority to students attending in zone when necessary to prevent or avoid overcrowded classrooms. So, I'm fine with removing the 5%, but unless I can get an interpretation from our attorney, but if I interpret that right, if one out of zone student causes us to have to add a teacher somewhere, then according to this policy, they won't be accepted.
Okay. Hal seconded, I believe, didn't you? Ms. Parker?
Sorry. Now that Mr. Lindsay brought that up, can staff kind of explain how they see that being implemented? Just because I know with that being out there, I can see people maybe you said 90% versus 100%, there are two schools. How are you would you be looking at that?
What we'd have to do is take the current enrollment that we've shared with you is with 0 out of zones in it, and we have it broken down by grade level as well as we shared, and we can make sure as we have those, we could probably convey to the principals, this is how many you can allow in each grade level. The problem we run into is when we go through with that, we know we're going to have increased enrollment or decreased enrollment as August comes. So that would be, if where it says the May, you know, that's where I want to take guidance from you. Do you want us to go ahead and say we will bump those out of zones or just keep it there? Am I clear about that? We can do it based off the numbers we have, but as we have the enrollment happen in the fall.
I think one thing that has been somewhat concerning to me is that we're doing projected enrollment, but there's projected enrollment and capacity, you know, and so if you have 80 seats that are open at a school and the school can hold 80 seats and we have 80 people that want to come, and I mean, I don't know why we wouldn't want to make that happen, I guess is where I'm coming from. I feel like if we're going with projections, that I'll be honest, at this point, I'm a little suspect on, and I mean, I would think you guys are too, because y'all don't have any idea that Caroline Parker's going to Baker next year, but if I ever fill out the paperwork, she will. So, you know, I just think that there's a lot of those things that you guys don't know, and you won't know until August 1st. But we do know how many students we can hold in a school based off of the numbers that Mr. Perryman's given us in the past.
Can I just say, we do have some schools that are at 50% capacity, and off of what you just said, we could double them, which would require adding double the staff. So at some point, I mean, we're talking about cutting 25 teachers. Are we going to move all of those teachers within the first 20 days? And I guess the question Mr. Hickman asked is, we take to capacity, we show up in August and you have 10 more kids in that grade, we're sending those 10 kids back to avoid hiring a teacher according to this policy. So folks need to understand that this would be an approval right now, but at any point, am I misreading that? At any point, you could be sent back to your home school without notice. Well, I mean, you would get notice, but it might be very short.
Mr. Lindsey, I take this, I mean, to be that we're at day zero. There's been preliminary allocations for teachers for schools for next school year. So if Mount Pleasant Elementary has, right now you guys have allocated 4 second grade teachers at Mount Pleasant Elementary, as long as an out-of-zone second grader doesn't require an additional teacher, then they can take that. But if an out-of-zone student causes, if there's enough in-zone students to fill up 4 second grade classes, then they can't take any out-of-zone second graders. That's the way I read this. And as you said, and to me, this is a chance you take if you go out of zone. If I send my kid out of zone and there's only one open spot in second grade at Mount Pleasant Elementary, and 2 kids walk in off the street we're not aware of on August the 5th, then my kid goes back to where they're zoned to. That's the tough part of it, but I'll leave it at that.
Yes, sir.
I would like to have it to where once they're approved, they're there for that calendar school year. Because here's the thing, and I'm sorry, I know financial matters, and I know we've got to pinch pennies, but we talk about student success, and we talk about depression, and all these things that plague our kids, and parents know where their kids need to go. They know what's best, and I'm sorry that I'm the emotional one, but that's devastating, and I just think we need to, once we approve it, they need to be there. And if we have to hire another teacher, then we have to do what's best for our students. That's my personal take on it.
Mr. Howell.
So let's just take out of zone out of this equation. If we got a 4th grade at one of our schools and a student comes in off the street and that requires us to add another teacher, they're all in zone, what would we do? we would hire another teacher. So to me, it's just doing what's right for the children. And if those children are at that school and we've told them they're at that school, they kind of need to be at that school. Who's to say that that child going to this school out of zone doesn't decrease a teacher from that school? I don't know. It could, it couldn't. I think that we're looking at pennies here, and once again, we need to be looking at children here and what's best for them. And we get bogged down in this. We've gotten bogged down in this for the last, I'm not even sure how many meetings now. But either we're here for kids or we're here for money. And I really think that we need to be focusing on what's right for the children. Just because a child is out of zone, there is a plethora of reasons why they're out of zone. And it could be that child just doesn't do well at that school. They need to be in this school for whatever whatever reason. Maybe it's the size of the school, what the school offers, certain teachers, what certain teachers can do. The child needs to be at that school. So either we do what's right for the children or we do what's right for our pocketbook. I personally would rather spend the money and do what's right for our children.
Thank you. Mr. Lindsey.
I'm looking at this holistically. If the subtraction of a teacher if an out of zone, if a kid leaves Randolph Howe to go to Riverside and that causes a subtraction of a teacher at Randolph Howe, but we add one at Riverside, our net gain is 0. I have no problem with that. And I wasn't going here, but I am now. What's right for one may not be right for the other 13,000. Sometimes we make concessions for a small number, and it negatively affects such a greater number. And then I'll just add, I know of people that they wanted their kid to go to a certain school. That they lived in the Woodard School District, but they wanted their kid to go to Mount Pleasant Elementary. They put their house up for sale, and they bought a house in the Mount Pleasant Elementary zone. We all have that choice. I live a half a mile from Mount Pleasant Elementary. If I want my kids to go to Woodard, then I can take the responsibility upon myself to put my house up for sale and buy a house in the Woodard School District. Now, it might not be ideal. I may have to downsize houses. I may have to, as Dave Ramsey says, I may have to live off beans and rice or rice and beans. I may have to make some tough decisions, but if I truly want to do that, I can go that route, and everyone has that choice. Again, I think we're making a concession with the motion to remove the 5%. Again, going back to what Mr. Perriman said, we just sit up here and beat a budget to death. A few weeks ago, we knocked 24 positions out of it. People may call that pennies, but at $50,000 a position, my math's not great, but I think that's $1.2 million, and that's no longer pennies. We get beat up about lack of raises. $1.2 million is 1.5% raise. I can keep using example after example of what $1.5 million is, but the bottom line is a lot of money. So again, if we don't affect the whole, if the net gain, net loss is 0 in teachers, I have no problem with it. But if it costs, if we have to add a teacher, then I think we should stick it with exactly what this policy is.
Ms. Irvin.
So I don't know who's been following the housing market lately and who's not, but currently our actives are slim to none, and prices in this area are going anywhere from $350 as a good starter home up to, in some areas, about like Santa Fe, my area, around $500, $500,000. So selling a home is not as easy as it was maybe 3 years ago. Another concern of mine is that, as we heard Mr. Morrow speak earlier, is that our county is growing at such a rate that whether we like it or not, we're going to have to realize that adding teachers is going to be a reality a lot quicker than we can even probably expect. So again, my request is to do what's best for the child and the children. And like I say, if we listen to these parents, you know, part of making Murray County great is also about not only educating a child, it's defining that child's needs and doing what's best for them emotionally and socially, and a lot of times that's where they can take comfort in their home school. So if there is a way to change this to where once it's approved for the calendar year, I'm going to request that.
I guess that would have to be in the form of an amendment.
Can I clarify the motion that's
Go
on the
ahead,
table?
yeah,
'Cause
please
I think
do that.
I just want to remind everyone, if anyone else wants to make motions that have other things to change an existing policy, I'm simply taking existing policy and removing 2 lines from it. The floor would be open for anyone to do anything else they want to do after that. I don't want to get too muddied on this. This is just to remove this. It's an existing policy. I want to remind everyone. So I would hope most people here agree that maybe these 2 lines need to go away. And again, other things, motions can be brought right after this one's voted on.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Howell?
And I've heard this argument time and time. I can just sell my house and move where I want to. You can't. Unless you have $300,000 or $200,000 to buy your house, cash money, offers are being made today over the asking price, and somebody's come in from California and paid cash for the house. So I'm sitting here trying to finance my house, doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I can't live in my own community and move where I want to move to. 2, I believe we have done this. I believe people have moved into Woodard school area only to be rezoned to Hampshire. We've gotten emails about that. So we can come up with what ifs all day long, but, and I understand that it's only pennies, but, you know, out of a $105 million budget, $1 million really kind of is pennies. It's a lot of pennies, I get it. But once again, I still want to put forth, I want to make sure that we're doing what's right for our children, and bumping kids out of classrooms because we have to add another teacher just doesn't make good educational sense to me. It makes great dollars and cents. It makes 100% great dollars and cents. But unfortunately, I'm not hired to be an accountant. I'm not elected to be an accountant. I'm elected to represent the students, the staff, and everyone involved in Murray County Public School System, and I just think that that's the best move, is to make sure that we're doing what's right for our children.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Ms. Kinzer?
Mr. Moore, by deleting these 2 lines, that means that staff members can go to the school where their parent teaches. That goes back to the way it was, right? 90% or whatever it is. I don't see a problem with, that's what the issue we have right now, is the 5%. Unless you all want to change the motion, amend it, or whatever, I think by just deleting it, that it will take away some of the angst that parents and some that have been rezoned, and yes, some Woodard have been rezoned to Hampshire, and actually my Brown school that all these years is now zoned to Woodard, that's 5 miles from me. So, yeah, I think that would relieve the angst that parents have.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Sims, you go, then Mr. Howe.
So I know, we don't know exactly what the new state law is gonna be. I mean, we just won't know until...
I'm gonna comment, because I've got it right in front of me.
Okay, but I assume there's gonna be some minute changes over the next year. I don't know for sure, but I would like to see us to currently go into this coming school year with something similar to where we will be next coming school year. I don't know what that's gonna be. I don't think it just says a reasonable number in the law. If that's a 90% capacity, 95%, who knows? Depending on the growth area, it may be 80% for particular schools. However, if we wait that long, if we don't do it tonight, we're gonna have students, principals, parents in limbo until next meeting. If we well, okay. The only if I can make an amendment to the current motion, if we could include in the suspension of lines 20 through 24, and I guess that suspension would just be similar to the suspension of lines 8 and 9. I'd make that in a motion.
Okay, there's been an amendment presented to the motion. Is there a second for the... Ms. Irvin?
Second.
All right, Ms. Irvin seconds. This would, in essence, take out the paragraph, well, it wouldn't in essence, this would take out the paragraph indicating that a student may be bumped if they are out of zone and an in-zone student would put that classroom over capacity. Am I understanding that correct? Okay. Any discussion specifically on this amendment? Mr. Lindsay?
So what happens when we have a school completely full, and we have 150 kids out of zone, and we have 0 seats left, and 5 people move into that zone? Where do we send those kids? Yeah, they're free. I mean, we can get one tomorrow. I mean, there's a lot more that goes into that. But I would love to hear the answer to that question.
Mr. Sims?
Well, that's why, Mr. Hickman, at the beginning, there's 2 schools, I think, that are between the 90 and 100. They're close to 90, so I don't expect there to be that problem. I mean, if there is, we may have to make a hard decision at that point, but we're not going to be, I don't think that is going to be a problem for the coming year, and that will give us time to make the decision whenever we make it, for whenever the state passes whatever they're going to pass. We'll have more time to determine better capacities.
Okay. Mr. Howell, is yours on the amendment or the motion?
Sure. I mean, if we want to put on our accounting hats and just say, we're looking at our students we currently have and what we think we may have, but, what about the loss of funds? Because you're going to have, and I believe we've even got emails about, there are students that are leaving our system because they're going to private school because of this issue. I don't know how many it is. It may be 1, maybe a dozen. I don't know. But, because of decisions like this does affect funding. We will lose students because of it. We've already lost, I believe it was 2 or 3 that said that they were already pulling their kids out and have already enrolled them into a private school. So, I mean, we can sit here and argue this till we're beating a dead horse, basically. But I just think we need to move on.
Okay, yours, Ms. Parker.
I wholeheartedly understand where Mr. Howell's coming from, but I also think that we, as a board, as an instruction department, we need to take this on as a challenge to make sure that all of our schools have equity, and everybody wants to go to all of our schools, not to feel like they need to go to one school over another because of where they live or where they don't live. So that's my challenge to the Board of Education, us, and staff.
Thank you. Seeing no other lights, Mr. Moore.
I would just like to speak out in opposition to the amendment to the motion. I think, I know you guys mean well, but I think y'all are shooting from the hip on this one, and you're making some bad decisions that you're going to have staff and this board figure out over the next few weeks. If you guys want to bring this back and have us talk about this further, I expect that we are going to fully rewrite the original policy once we get state guidelines. But I think you guys are making some decisions that are just, you're immediately opening holes in this policy day one, just as Mr. Lindsay brought up, that you haven't even solved, and I think that's just bad business for us to get into. So I will be voting against the amendment.
Mr. Sims.
Last comment. Mr. Hickman, is the policy with the amendment and with the original, motion, is it similar to how the schools have been operating for the past 5 to 6 years? Whether it was by policy, procedure, right or wrong, is it how it's been operating?
No. Pretty much once a student did receive an out-of-zone, they were there. And that is to my understanding, as I wasn't here the last few years. It was pretty much, as soon as they got that out-of-zone, it was gold. They stayed in that position regardless if it required us to have to bump up to another teacher or not. That's, and just for jogging the memory, that's why one of the reasons this policy was brought forth again was because the board and staff itself said, you know, we really need to look at that, and we need to really follow policy if that's the way it's going to be written. So with that said, you know, moving forward, you guys, the board's job is to write the policy. My job is to enforce it. So if the policy is written as thus, I'm going to enforce it. I don't question what you guys pass. I just do it.
Right. So if 8 and 9 and 20 and 24 are struck, were to be struck, or suspended temporarily, that would be very close to how the system has operated over the past several years.
You're saying if we yes. Okay. It's right now you have some schools, as we've showed you the numbers for this year, that are well above the 5%, that pretty much once they got that out of zone, it was like a lifetime ticket unless the bottom paragraph, lines 28 and 29, was hit. It pretty much stayed that way. And, you know, Eric's been here a while, and he could probably attest to what I'm saying was before this year, you know, once you got that ticket, it was a ticket for the whole ride at that school. So once again, whatever this board deems to pass as policy, I'm going to enforce it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, on the amendment, Mr. Lindsay.
I got a couple questions, Mr. Perriman. How many, but because the biggest problem we have is it one school, and we know it. Do you remember off the top of your head with the new rezoning, how many kids are in zone to go to Hampshire today?
Roughly 480. We have currently 240 in zone. Today, right now, there's 204. There's 400 kids, 240 in zone.
The new zoning.
480.
480. And what's the capacity of Hampshire?
About 550.
And as of today, we have roughly 140 out of zone in Hampshire.
Correct.
So let's do math. Next year, we have approved a zoning plan where we're sending 480 kids that now live in the Hampshire zone. The capacity is 500. They cannot take 140 like they have this year. The numbers just don't add up. At 20 out of zone, if every student in zone goes to Hampshire, and I realize we're dealing with hypotheticals, but if every student in zone goes to Hampshire, we can, at 20 out of zone, we're at capacity.
Can I say just two things, and then I promise I'll get out of the way. One, if you allow basically every out of zone to be reapproved, you just took a lot of transportation that you are providing for kids away from them, because now they're out of zone, potentially going back to where they were, so you've denied a service. Second thing is, this came out with the notion out there by the community that there was a 5% limit, and it was open for the month of April. You may have folks that did not apply simply because they thought there was not a chance to get out there. I say this out of complete respect to you all individually. You made a decision in December. Apparently it was a hard one, so now we got to pivot last minute. The folks sitting behind me really do get put in a bad spot, and that's okay. That's okay. We work for you and we work hard, but we made a decision we don't know what it looks like, you can change this tonight and go back to where you are, then we just wasted an entire rezoning process. We just wasted it. So, and that's Eric's opinion, and you know when you gave me a microphone it was dangerous. But I tell you the truth how I see it, I always do, and I'll be quiet, Mr. Fulbright.
Okay, I think we've pretty well covered this and answered all the questions we need answered for the amendment portion of this. I will go ahead and say I believe we're ready to vote on the amendment to suspend lines 20 through 24 of this policy. The amendment only pertains to that paragraph, correct? But the amendment is to that motion. We're not voting on the motion yet. We're voting on the amendment to add the suspension of lines 20 through 24. Okay, and that will require yes, that's correct. All right, is everybody clear on what we're voting on? And that is to remove this would be the amendment to remove this paragraph, lines 20 through 24. I believe we're ready to vote. Okay. That amendment does not pass. So we will go back to the original motion to suspend lines 8 and 9 of this policy.
And just to be clear, and I apologize, we don't run into this very often, but your policy 1.6 says any board policy or part thereof may be suspended by an affirmative vote of a majority of the members of the board. So you can suspend it via just a majority vote, but if you're going to suspend it immediately, I still think that takes 2/3 vote. So if that affects the motion, I just wanted you to know about that in advance.
Okay.
When we put in the motion that it is immediate, sorry, I just want to be...
Effective immediately, which then will put us at a 2/3 majority vote. Wait a minute. Well, I'm hearing a lot of... I do want to ask for clarification. Is our 2/3 of the body or 2/3 of those present?
2/3 of the body.
So 2/3 of 12 then?
Or 11.
Oh, we have 11 districts. All right.
So eight votes.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? This will be on the motion to strike these two lines. Mr. Moore.
And just to follow up with this again, the clarification, I know Mr. Lindsay brought this up, would be that as part of this, this body has approved a number of employees, a net number for the total. So if any teachers are to be added, it would need to come before this board again. I think that was what the spirit of this always was at the beginning of this, and that's still tied in with later on in the policy, as Mr. Lindsay pointed out.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other lights. I believe we're ready to vote on the policy with those two lines removed.
Please vote now.
Okay, passes unanimously. Just to answer a question that was brought up earlier, what the legislation looks like for next year, and I'm not gonna spend a lot of time, but I will say this. It is based off of the building capacity, not the number of teachers that you hire. So that's, what we're gonna be shooting for. That's what enrollment figures will be based on next fall. All right, moving on.
Okay. So the next little bit is different options that I've created to give to the board. The last board session, we had the support staff and administrative handbooks. That was mostly looking at the revision of sick leave, personal, professional, and vacation in order to create the time balances off for the finance department for the implementation of the new software Chronos system. In that I'm just going to give a brief overview of all of what's coming up. There's the sick leave, which is a policy, the personal and professional leave a policy, vacation and holiday as the policy. What I put in those policies were what was already in the handbook. I did those if the board would like to approve just as the policies of the vacation or time leave off. I also did update the support staff handbook and the administrator handbook, which I will make note, as I was reviewing it again today on the administrator handbook on page 6, I do need to delete the one line about, on Article 2, Section 6, will need to be updated to reflect Board Policy 6.204, that employees are not charged for the non-resident, so that would be updated to make sure I just missed that on the initial one. So those are the options I was trying to give to the board because I was under the understanding from Doug's office that we needed the vacation policy, the time off leave policies to be approved sooner rather than later so that they can get those set up in the implementation of Chronos so all that gets off on the right foot. And I also, I think that you can do, if you would like to just approve in the handbook section the time off leave balances, because I know there's also a lot of other information that I know was mentioned that wanted to be gone over as well. So that was all the options. I'm happy to answer any questions. Just trying to give the board everything hopefully possible to also meet deadlines that we're needing in order to implement the software properly.
Comments on these presented policies? Mr. Laconin.
I would, she mentioned the handbook needing, the administrator handbook needing an amendment, to make sure that it's in line with the time off policies and everything. I would probably go ahead and, that's a revision that we found, or she found that, so I would recommend doing that. But I would ask that these have an effective date of 7/1/2021, so that they can be implemented appropriately. We've been accruing days at the rates for this year based on current policy, so we don't want to mix that in the middle of the process. So making it effective 7/1/2021 would be helpful and in making sure this gets off on the right foot. And we do need these approved so that we can move forward with the process. We want to get this done as quickly but as perfect as we can. And so with that, we need to start off on exactly how we're going to be carrying it out for next school year. So
It does look like there is an effective date of 7/1/21 listed in the motion that's on the agenda.
Yeah, I did include that in the information.
Thank you.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Thank you, Doug.
No other comments on I guess we need to do each one of these separately. Sick leave, professional leave, and then vacation. Definitely, we need to do them separately.
Yeah, if the
All right.
yeah, sorry.
Was there even a motion made? Okay.
Why do we have to do it separately? Can we not make a motion to approve 7.4.5? Oh, but you've got choices, right?
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's what gets it.
Sorry.
Mr. Moore.
I'm going to reiterate what I said at the work session. This is part of the reason I wanted this to go to another work session. I understand there's a timeline, but there's a lot to unpack here as a board, and I feel like we still haven't done it justice. I would have liked to have seen just the bare minimum and changes what are required for what you're talking about with the time management part, and if we need to revisit this. But I think there's larger pieces here, personally as a board member, that I'd like to dive into on every one of these.
Go ahead.
The bare minimum would be the time off leave balances is what I incorporated into the policies themselves. And as well, if you would not want to approve the policies themselves, but would like to just approve the time off leave balances inside the handbook, I left that as an option too, to where we could then come back and discuss the rest of the handbook. Because the handbook itself wouldn't go effective until 7/1/21, so then we could bring it to the next work session and work through the remainder of the information in the handbook if we want to leave it just in the handbook and not put it in the policy.
And Mr. Moore, based off of your conversations at the work session, was one of the reasons we looked at, instead of giving you the whole administrator or classified handbook, because we know there was questions, that just the things that Doug needs were pulled into those specific policies. And then we've had discussion that in the handbook later, they would just be referenced as a policy, not necessarily copied word for word, so the employee could just go look up the policy. So the first things, as Ms. Gerard's saying, is we did pull those out specifically just to do them and not get into the rest of it.
Okay, Mr. Laconin.
Internally, there's about, I don't know how many emails, I didn't count them all, but we have worked with every department. We have hundreds of different job titles that we went through on just these sick leave, personal, professional leave, and vacation and holiday policies. We worked with every single department, every single position, and sent it out for revision for departments to add input. We have put time into these policies. I mean, I think that the final draft on sick leave, personal and professional leave, and vacation and holiday is the direction that staff wants to go. I will make whatever the school board and school district wants to have happen, as far as the amount of days and all of that. But we did work internally and go through every position and try to make this as fair as possible, with also staying consistent in how we accrue and spend time when people take days off and earn them through the months that they work. So a lot of time has gone into these three policies, and I completely understand the staff handbooks. I mean, we've had multiple conversations about those. They're long, they're arduous. Jennifer took on a huge task when she just cracked that thing open, and so did we, because we found that it hadn't been updated in a long time to match policy. Jennifer has gone through and made sure, hey, policy says this, our handbook says this, what are we supposed to do? Well, we need to fix it. That's why we're looking at it. We're not just going to stumble across something that we find out that's not in line and then be like, well, whatever. So a lot of work has gone into this, and I'll be honest, if we don't vote on sick, personal, and vacation, it just pushes this timeline out further. I have to tell you, I have got to have this puppy up and running 7/1 at the latest, because I will not have a way for food service employees to clock in and out. Okay. They'll have to fill out sheets of paper, of a timesheet, and there will not be a digital clock in, clock out. Their first work week that they'll be there is July 6th for next fiscal year. Okay. So I want to be able to have time to put out training. I'm not just going to spring this on these employees. They need training. This has been planned out, worked on, and you guys gave me a task. I'm just trying to do it, and I'm ready to give those results to the employees of Maury County Public Schools.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Parker.
I think one thing that I would like to see us address, though, as a part of this, is when we approve our calendar, we also approve closing central office certain days. And I'll just be honest, with some of the accruals that are going on here, I just don't think we need to be closing for certain days. I don't think that should be added in. I mean, I think if people are 12-month employees and they're accruing potentially 2 days at a time for various things. I really think we need to look at what this is costing us as a system. I mean, 'cause the way that it's being rounded, you know, and I'm just looking at the vacation and holidays, we set out what the holidays are, but then we have additional holidays that we designate in our calendar. And then on top of that, an administrator in year 5 would have been earning 1 1/4, now is gonna be earning 1 1/2. So that got rounded up. For 15, that would have been 1 3/4 that they would have been accruing, but now they're gonna accrue 2. So we rounded up, and that's gonna have a cost to us. So I think we need to think about that, and then I also think we need to think about whether or not we want to have those days in the calendar.
Thank you. We, do need a motion, either move these, together or separately. I will say we have a very competent staff who has worked endless hours on this. I'm not a human resource specialist, I'm not an accountant, so I put my trust in you guys. I need a motion.
I move that we use, using the final draft, that we, correct. Okay, that we approve it.
Okay, final draft of,
Sick leave, 7.4.5. If you want to, do them one at a time. Or the 3 policies.
can we do all 3 of them together, Jake?
Sure.
'Cause we've been talking about all 3 of them
All right.
together.
Then the final draft of also 7.4.6 and 7.4.7.
Okay, thank you. We do have a motion, is there a second? Second from Mr. Lindsay. Don't see any lights for further. Mr. Moore?
Since this is dated 7/1, we don't have to speed up posting or anything, we're good on this, okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I believe we're ready to vote on the 3 final drafts to these policies.
Please vote now.
Vote is 7-2. These 3 policies pass.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Lindsay.
I think there was a lot of good points brought up, and I understand the need to give Doug some direction, but I also would like at the next work session to bring these back, 'cause there's some more topics that, you know, the unlimited accumulation of days, there's some more things that I think that we need to address, but I did vote yes, because Doug needs some direction to implement Chronos, so.
Okay, thank you very much. We can always continue these discussions. Any, or under support staff handbook?
Well, since we've passed these policies, if we just wanna move to make these handbooks on the next work session, 'cause that's really what was the point of them, so.
That's fine then, let's do that.
Okay. And would you like the policies as well on the work session as Mr. Lindsay, or just?
Okay.
You're posting them to come back up and then go effective July 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it that way then. Okay, is the same for the administrator handbook, or?
Yeah, yes, I'm good with that if
Okay.
you all are.
All right, sounds good. All right, next item will be 7.5, Kids on Stage, and we do have Ms. Barrier with us, who has been diligently waiting in the back. If we have any questions, I will say I reached out to Wes to ask about the art director position, why it was different from the others, and he mentioned, well, I'll let Ms. Barrier, you probably could explain it a lot better than I could.
Well, I kind of doubt it since you guys have been working extensively together since October, but my name is Lindsay. Thank you for having me here tonight. Because it's a good day for a duck. As an administrative employee at Smelter Service Corporation in Mount Pleasant, my role is directly tied to Kids on Stage of Murray County. And so at the request of Mr. Overholzer, who could not be here today, he asked me to come and try to represent as best as I can, so.
And I believe that was our only question, was it not, about the art position, why it was listed as different? Or am
Okay,
I reading
so-
more into the discussion? That's what I thought.
From my understanding, we submitted, the Kids on Stage Board of Directors submitted the two separate MOUs, one for the arts director position and one for the supplemental positions. And we feel like we addressed all the concerns that the board had at that time. And these were submitted to you guys in early March. And so, if there's any other issues, edits, comments that you feel we need to address, Kids on Stage is happy to continue to amend what we feel like should be amended. You know, I just feel like we've submitted them to you guys, so we're kind of waiting for a response. And I know Mr. Fulbright has been working with Wes a lot since October on getting these MOUs your way. As far as the arts director MOU goes, what kind of questions do you have?
I think the only question was why it was listed. Ms. Kinzer, tell me what I'm trying to say.
In going through all of them, as I read them, I saw that salary was not part of it because you all are going to pay salary, benefits, everything. None of that comes through the Board of Education. But in the MOU for the art director, the salary was listed, and I just wondered why that was different.
Well, from my understanding, the salary is listed and reimbursed by Kids on Stage quarterly to the Murray County Public Schools. So that arts director position is still an employee of Murray County Public Schools. Kids on Stage reimburses for a portion of it,
and
the 90% of it, and then the Murray County Public Schools pays an additional on that plus the benefits.
I believe the purpose behind that, if I understood my conversation right with Mr. West, was that, and maybe I'm under a different understanding, but that there's always an art director within the school. I mean, within all the schools have an art program. Yeah.
All the schools have an art program.
So that's why this would not be a separate added expense to Kids on Stage, if I'm describing that right.
Kids on...
Okay, then
He's an arts director, which not all the schools have.
Okay,
but
then
if you look at the role description that was also provided, it does a breakdown of how much time they would spend in Mount Pleasant, and then that additional amount that's not reimbursed by Kids on Stage is for him to spend 10% at all the other schools in Murray County Public School system.
Okay.
If that helps.
That does help, actually, quite a bit. Is your light on, Ms. Kinzer? I can't tell. No. Okay. Okay. Ms. Parker?
I just wanted to make a motion to approve the supplemental MOU and the arts director MOU.
Okay. I have a motion to approve those two. Need a second? Second by Mr. Howe. Any further discussion? I am just going to add one little tidbit of information. Many of you have seen the presentation that Gwen Evans from Spring Hill High School has for developing a Murray County Historical Museum that's totally kid-based and totally kid-operated and run. He's actually been in contact with Wes. You're going to have to say his last name for me.
I'm very nervous. Oberholzer. You can just call him Wes.
I have asked them to be in contact so that we can start to form what Kids on Stage has developed in Mount Pleasant, potentially up in Spring Hill, bringing businesses together, supporting a work-based program or a kind of a separate learning opportunity program. That was one of the things that we really stressed, was being able to replicate this throughout the county. And Wes has taken a good step in talking with Mr. Evans up in Spring Hill about that. So I want to bring that up, that's a goal we discussed that's actually...
Well, that was when we restructured the board to bring the business and educational communities closer together. That was the goal, you know, if these MOUs were approved. If they weren't, then back to Mount Pleasant, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think, and I know that the arts director has, the STEM director worked with multiple schools to help them work on the process of getting their STEM TSI and certification. So that was accomplished. So now we're, you know, evolving as always, change is always moving forward. So, and I know that the arts director has also been working with, multiple schools, so
Great.
he would be great to be involved in that, so.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second, and I think we're ready to vote.
Please vote now.
Looks like we are unanimous. Look forward to working together another year.
Thank you all.
Thank you for all your work, and, please send our thanks to the board as well. Ah, it's fun. All right, anything else that we need to cover? It doesn't look like there's anything on the agenda going forward. Wait, I'm very negligent in not recognizing that it is Teacher Appreciation Week. Now that every teacher we have pretty much has left the meeting, so those of you that have stayed, thank you for your work and thank you for your service to the school system. Yeah, we did get quite a bit off track in some areas, but thank you. We do have a motion to adjourn. Those of you that want to second, please stand up and leave. All those